On fire. Thank you for joining us this morning for another conversation that will warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. As you just heard there, my name is Tim Cavey. I'm an 8th grade teacher, assistant principal, and the host of the Teachers on Fire podcast. And I'm joined today by 3 exceptional women and leaders. They are the authors of a book called The Evolving Learner. And we're talking today about Pro-D. Or as they will tell us in a few moments, professional learning is the shift we want to be making. So I look forward to digging into that. But first of all, let's introduce our wonderful guests, starting with you, Kristy. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your current context looks like.
Yeah, so Kristy Andre, I am a principal in Southern California, and I'm actually also an adjunct professor in the ed tech program. And I'm really just like a student-centered empathy leader, whatever you want to call it. That's my firm foundation on everything. I'm also a mom, and I have I'm a mom of a kid that's at kindergarten in this COVID world right now.
All right. Wow. I bet that's been an adventure. So I look forward to hearing more about that. Lauren, over to you.
Hi there. My name is Lauren Steinman. I am an elementary school principal in Southern California as well. And I have 2 sons, a 1st grader and a 3rd grader, also in COVID times. So it's been very interesting. So from the parent perspective and the admin perspective, I've been in education for a very long time. I was an elementary school teacher and then a digital learning TOSA and a STEM TOSA. And so have had lots of different experiences. It's been great.
Fantastic. Wow. My hat just goes off to you principals and moms of little ones. That's just fantastic. And Lainie, over to you.
Well, hello, I'm Lainie Rowell, and I am an educator, author, podcaster, and international consultant. I get to travel all over the world, which has been a lot easier in the COVID. A lot of things not easy during COVID, but remote going across the world has been a little easier. My biggest client is Orange County Department of Education here in California, and 23 years in education. And I don't want my kids to get mad if I don't talk about them. So I have a 1st grader and a 4th grader as well. So.
All right. All right. Very fun. Well, let's get right into it and talk about your subtitle, the move from professional development to professional learning. That's an interesting transition, an interesting shift, and I'm sure there's a lot behind it. So where does that come from and why is that shift important? Kristy, do you want to tackle that one?
Absolutely. So we really felt like professional development is something that really is, not choice and is really given to you, and whatever that looks like, district-wide or school-wide. And when you shift to something like professional learning, it's something that you want to learn, you have choice in the matter, and you get to control and decide on. And so you really get to look at what you're passionate about, and then you really grow into that. And so that was really at the heart of where we were. And I think as a professional learner, that's how I started to grow. And it really started, I taught internationally in South Africa. And while I was there, I didn't have conferences, I didn't have professional development. So I really had to seek out my own information. And then I realized how important that was because I still wanted to grow as an educator and I needed to find new things to help my students. And so that's kind of where my journey started with professional learning.
That is so interesting. I'd love to hear more about South Africa as well. I want to say good morning to Melissa and Shannon. Thank you for joining us. Good to see some familiar faces already. Well, we want to talk next about personalization. And we hear a lot about, of course, when we think about professional development or professional learning, we hear that knock of one size fits all doesn't work. So how can we think about personalizing professional learning in efficient and effective ways? Is that even possible? Lainie, could you speak to that one?
Absolutely. So yes, we believe it is 100% possible. And this book is about a paradigm shift. And we've been talking, just adding to Kristy's response, we've been talking in the book about it's not really so much a semantics of professional development versus professional learning. It's a shift in how we approach it. And so this concept of personalizing adult learning is not new. In the book, we talk about Malcolm Knowles and, the 4 principles of adult learning. And so we know it needs to be their involvement. We need to give them agency. We want to make it super relevant and actually immediately relevant. That's a very big deal. So to me, that's a big part of personalizing it. It needs to be something that is going to matter to them right now, not 6 months from now, not a year from now, not if they happen to teach 5th grade in the future. And so I think that's a really important thing. And it really needs to be problem-centered. And we talk about the cycle of inquiry in the book. And so you have to have that focus. What is your problem of practice? And then how can we go through a cycle of inquiry to work through that problem? Continuous improvement is what we're looking for. So we believe it is absolutely possible. I'm going to steal some language from the blended learning world. If we can give some choice over time, pace, place, and path, that would be amazing. That would be my goal. That's what we want.
I just did some writing this past weekend about the beauty of passion projects and Genius Hour within my middle school classroom. And my mind was just blown once again. I mean, I literally got chills watching students and listening to them share about their learning and thinking I did none of this. It was all motivated by their needs, passions, interests. And so that makes me think about how does that translate into the educator space? How can we channel some of that same energy? Lauren, Kristy, would either of you like to speak to that?
Kristy, go for it.
Did you see me? I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a little shout out because our district does this really well. And I say that because Lauren and I work in the same district. And a few years ago, we did something called an innovation day. And it allowed our teachers the freedom to, however you want to innovate in your practice, go ahead and do it. And I too was a middle school teacher and I did passion projects and it was phenomenal. And then I think about as a teacher, what I can be passionate and how I can grow in that area. I mean, that's life-changing because then you can really focus on what you want to, because imagine teaching something that you aren't passionate about. Like, I think that also is the other side of things. But if you do have this idea and you want to go forward, how excited you are about it, and then you get your kids excited about it. Yes. I think that's huge.
And just to springboard off of that, I think that that's really the heart of what we try to talk about in the book is that, as educators, and as administrators, we try to get our students really fired up about things and on fire about things. And I think that a lot of times we lose that as adults, or we lose that feeling of agency, right? And particularly when you get in a career and things are happening to you and people are telling you, and this is what we're going to learn about. And you're going to read this book this summer and you're going to love it. And it's going to be awesome versus, hey, what's really sparking your interest right now? So, I think that that's what we're trying to get at.
Absolutely. And then my next thought is how can we showcase that and share that effectively? So I'm probably getting ahead of myself here in this conversation because we're probably getting to all of those ideas, but this is already getting me excited. I just want to highlight a few comments from our audience. Thank you, Mahesh, for tuning in from LinkedIn. He says, why cannot one make professional development personal, individual, and problem-based? And Mina on Twitter says, I love how you put it immediately relevant. I always look for things that I can use tomorrow. And our friends at the Staff Room Podcast, Shay and Pav are here, teacher-centered or system-centered, allow teachers a space to create, evolve, and share. More comments coming in that I will have to try to come back to, but let's move on in this conversation. So next we want to talk about number 4, how do we need to think of professional learning in terms of goals and outcomes? And why is that important? That's something that really caught my eye when I was looking at your book, The Evolving Learner, goals and outcomes. So making this measurable, and why is that important? Let's go to you on that, Kristy.
Yeah, and we really go back to student-centered and how do we meet our students' needs. And I think our PLCs became such a big buzzword for a while, and it kind of has mixed feelings toward teachers because I think we did it wrong. If you truly did it right, then it was you truly did the DeFore model and you got into that data, then it was such a big growth and difference. And then all of a sudden it just became do PLCs. And I feel like if we do it right and really set goals, then we're going to have these amazing outcomes. So I look at our students. That's where you obviously start first. And then you go, okay, what do our students needs? And how do I set a goal to really make sure that I'm hitting all their needs? But I think that it really starts as ourselves, as humans, and looking at what's my goal in my professional life and what do I want to seek out. And so I think one way that you can do this, and you start to see this in our kind of weave throughout our book, I think it really starts with social emotional learning and how we can do that not only as adults, but with our own kids. Because sometimes if we look at our students' needs and we see, hey, I have these group of kids that really need support in reading, then we might realize that it's not about their need for, phonics or phonemic awareness, but our comprehension, whatever it is. It's actually that we need some trauma-informed practices because there's a lot going on in their mind that's happening at home that they need to deal with. And so we really need to set forth those baseline social emotional learning pathways so that we can really support our students. And I think that starts with our own social emotional learning. So when you're looking at goals, it doesn't necessarily need to be how am I growing in my certain subject area, but how am I growing as a person and a leader in my classroom? And one thing that we kind of hit on is I know I can speak for the we is we're followers of Brene Brown and Mark Brackett, where we really look at giving ourselves that permission to feel, and how do we really dive into conversations, that rumbling starters where we can really have those hard conversations, not only with our peers in our own school, and then being able to bring that vulnerability to our own students where we can teach those life skills for them. I know I went all around there, but I just feel like there's so much in that question that that isn't as easy as I'm going to set this goal, because I feel like we as principals, we come in with that, all right, teachers, we're going to put a goal for the year and I need to look at how you grew that year. But there's so many different ways that can happen. And it really starts with ourselves as humans, and then how we can be passionate and model that for our students, especially, and this is my last point, especially this year. I feel like this year in COVID, there's been a lot of teacher burnout. And I know for our site, we really just focused on being passionate in ourselves and reigniting that passion, because it's so easy to just feel so overwhelmed on how we can really support our students if they're at home, or we're live streaming, or we're teaching virtual, or we're teaching both. And so how do we really make sure that our teachers are getting filled up so they can kind of pour out in that passion and love for their students?
Can I add one real quick thing? And because that's exactly it, at what you just said, Kristy. I think when we come back for next year, right? The worst thing we could do as administrators and as teachers or anything is just say, okay, well, back to normal. Here we go. I think we all have to kind of honor this collective experience that we've been through and the trauma, and acknowledge that and say, and hey, wherever you're at right now and however you're coming to us, you have choices still. And where do you want to start, and how can we do that together? And then that's how we're going to start, I think, this growth pattern.
I love so many of the points that came up there. And Kristy, you sort of touched on more of a holistic thinking about goals as well. I mean, we are, and someone in the comments mentioned it as well, we are more effective as educators when we are more effective and whole as people too. And so that starts to get me thinking about, I wonder if some of the goals we should be setting are in these other domains as well. And maybe that crosses some personal, professional boundaries, or I don't know, but to me, that's an intriguing direction to go in as well. Let me just ask you, I know we have a couple of principals here and leaders. What is the mechanism, or what does it look like in terms of checking in with your teachers throughout the year? Lauren, how do you get a sense of how those goals are coming along? How often do you check in, or is it more of a year-end reflection, or what does that look like?
No, I think that it's really important to get a temperature read on people on a regular basis. And I think the best way to do that is in a personalized way. Sure, we can all sort of shoot out an email and say, hey, let me know if you need anything, but really getting into the classrooms, talking to people one-on-one and saying, how are you doing? Like, really, how are you doing? Is super important. And that's when you get, I think, to the heart of connection as an administrator with teachers, and also get a better understanding it really goes back to what we were just talking about. If you can understand someone personally and know them and really understand them, that's where you start instructionally. And that's how you can get them to drive connection with students. It's very like cyclical in that way.
Yeah. If I could just add, I think for me, what I've been doing, and I work with a lot of different groups, but I've been doing the signature practices from Castle, the 3 signature practices. So when we're together, whether it's a small group or a large group, we're doing that welcome inclusion activity. We're making sure there's engaging strategies, and we're doing the optimistic closure. And it's not to say that that's enough, but that is an embedded, ongoing, I'm always hearing how people are doing, and then also to do the one-on-one. So for me, I'm trying to always think about the balance of how can I do it when we're all together, when we come together as a group, and then how can I make those individual connections as well.
And then just to piggyback on that, there was 2 like really practical things that were powerful this year for my school. One was mid-year, and it really could be any time of the year, but I walked rooms and at like lunchtime, right? And I just met individually with teachers, and I asked them this question was, what do you need? And what I got out of that was either a personal thing or something as simple as like, actually, I really could use like a different monitor, or like that varied, but it was super powerful just to be able to connect with my teachers and allow them that space to talk about what they need. And then the other practical thing was I took my leadership through Dare to Lead this year, and just used that daring practice or daring classrooms book study. And that was amazing just because I was building up my teacher leaders, and then the only expectation was for them to be that and model that not only with their students, but with their PLCs and their grade level teams. And I feel like that really was my most powerful thing that was like easy to do, but had amazing, amazing conversations throughout the year.
I think sometimes administrators are almost afraid of asking that question, what do you need? Because the answer might be something that we can't really deliver on, like give me no emails or no faculty meetings ever, or, you know, or more personal days or whatever it might be. But I love that question for a lot of reasons, because number one, it's so direct and actionable. I mean, like you said, it might be just a better monitor or something very practical that's driving them crazy, and it also lets those teachers be heard, right? And I think that's really important as well. Well, let's keep this going. You talk in your book, The Evolving Learner, about learning from students, from peers, and the world. So I was intrigued by that. I'd like to break that down a little bit further. Let's start by talking about how can we do a better job of learning from our students. Lainie, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, so we talk about learning from kids first because we believe that everything should start with kids. And so we really want to think about what are the ways that we as professionals can actually learn from our clients, if you will, like who we're here to serve. And so we talk in the book about 2 main things. We talk about how there's actually like 2 cycles of inquiry potentially going on in a classroom, we hope. There's a cycle of inquiry that our kids are in for content and skills and knowledge. And then there's a cycle of inquiry that we're in for improving our practice. And so we can use things like formative assessment as a tool to inform us as to what we need to work on. So ideally, we've got this focus that we're working on, and we're using formative assessment and just even watching our kids in some more what's the word I'm looking, anecdotal, if you will, like how can I improve based on what I'm seeing? And then we also talk about how do we really shift to empowering our learners. And so one of the greatest stories that I've heard in this crazy cuckoo bananas time is, and I've heard it more than once, is I've heard teachers say, oh my gosh, I lost my internet and I came back and one of my students was teaching. And I'm like, yes, but that could have been happening before the pandemic. We feel so obligated. We want to help so much that we have put ourselves in the front of the classroom too often. And so how can we really leverage kids and learn from them? And so we give examples, very explicit examples in the book. One of my favorites is kids as tutorial designers. I love the idea of kids creating tutorials that can then be turned around to teach other kids. We're never going to say it exactly how a kid would say it and vice versa. And it's kind of their proximity to learning. And so they're going to actually understand the struggles of other kids more than we would. And so we're really focusing in on those two things, is how can we make thinking visible so that we can learn in that way? And then also, how can we really give our kids agency and empower them? And so we even have a quote in the book. It's like, we believe all kids can learn, all kids can teach. And so we really want to have that focus as we move forward. I love learning from kids. They teach me all the time. My own personal children teach me all the time. Often it's a lot about humility, but I think there's so much that we can learn from our kids, and that's something we all believe. So we really wanted kids first.
I live and teach. Well, I don't live, I guess. I teach and work in a middle school context. And absolutely, when you ask middle schoolers for their opinion on something, usually you'll get a pretty direct and honest answer. So be ready for the answers that come, I guess, is one thing I would say there. Now, Lainie, I want to go back to you for just a moment. I'm a data guy or a stats guy, and I'm not talking about standardized tests so much, but in terms of collecting student information, I love to put surveys out on Google Forms or use a school-wide Google Classroom. Do you have any other ways that you do that digitally that sort of aggregates all that info?
Oh, I'm kind of a nerd on formative assessment. I'm a little worried this might go sideways if I dig too deep into this, but I will say that when you say data, or did you say data? Is that
data? Yeah.
So either way, one thing that I'm trying to balance is I'm trying to balance the qualitative and the quantitative, right? Mm-hmm. So I want, yes, the multiple choice is really helpful, especially in the moment. I can pivot on that. You know, back when we were in person, I would use things like Plickers or any sort of response system where I can do the multiple choice, because I like to do peer instruction, and that data really helps me. So if I put a question out there and I see that half the group has it correct and half doesn't, I'm going to ask them to turn and talk to each other. And then I'm going to walk around the room and I'm going to listen. So now they're doing peer instruction, but I'm also hearing what is the way that's actually helping those who don't understand. And then I'm also going to talk about the qualitative. And I love, and since Che and Pav are here, and I know you did something a couple weeks ago with the two of them, and Noah, Daniel, I love the intentional thinking of synchronous and asynchronous. So when I'm thinking about data, I don't want to just be thinking about, you know, what did the multiple choice look like? I also want to be thinking about, like, was there a discussion board where I was giving everyone a voice, everyone an opportunity to share their thinking? And so like I said, this could go sideways because I kind of nerd out on this stuff, talking about formative assessment, but I really want to be super intentional in giving everyone a voice in the room. That's a big deal to me.
Awesome. All right, let's talk next about how we can learn from our peers. These are so juicy. I love these questions and topics. So thinking about how we can go to our colleagues and actually learn from others, and maybe not our colleagues, maybe others around the district. But Kristy, speak to this one a little bit. How can we learn from our peers?
You know, one way where this really got me passionate was Lauren and I both were instructional coaches. So one, coaching's huge. If your district can afford coaching or not afford coaching, there's lots of ways that you can utilize this throughout the year, because I think that's powerful. But I really, as a coach, I walked into a PLC and I was kind of supporting this conversation. And all of a sudden a teacher, like a first or second year teacher, was like, you know, I'm kind of stuck. I can't get my readers past a certain level. I don't know what to do. And I was like, oh, hey, teacher that has taught 26 years, do you have any strategies? And then she literally like listed off, she's like, oh, they always get stuck there. This is what I do. And I was like, powerful moment right here. Yeah. But I think letting down that guard, one, as a new teacher, and that we can learn from new teachers because they're coming in with those amazing new practices and like ideas that they're searching out. So letting them have a voice, but also getting our seasoned teachers to share and work together. Another practical way, and this is a little tricky, but as a principal, what we can do to support our teachers. One thing I did this year was called the gift of time. And I just set up Calendly, and I kind of, it matches my calendar. And so anytime that I have a free 30-minute block, my teachers can sign up for the gift of time. And what that looks like is really they can do what with it. They if they need a break or whatever, they can do that too. But one cool thing that happened was that gives them a chance to walk around and observe other teachers. So I think we often don't learn from each other because we don't get to see what we're doing. But if you walk into another teacher's room, you get to see even the littlest things. You get to see what's on their walls, what they're doing. One thing that's been really powerful in this COVID land has been Pear Deck, because it's allowed our students at home and in person, you get to kind of visualize their thinking right on the screen. And when we first started using it, we realized that some of our at-home learners weren't doing it, which, right, we kind of had a feeling, but we were like, oh yeah, they're not. And then we can check in and be like, hey, what do you need support with? How can I get you started? And then all of a sudden their ideas kind of started coming out. But I really do feel like there was that trend on Twitter that was the hashtag observe me. And then it kind of disappeared, and probably because the way that the last few years have come. But I really feel like we need to come back to that, because I think that that's a powerful way that we can all invite teachers in and to learn from each other. And then if I go back to the coaching method, man, that's powerful and amazing, because then you can really build up teachers from where they are and really feed into them and allow them to go see other people. And then also model different things. Like as a coach, you can go in, they can learn from you, they can learn from each other, you can coach each. There's lots of different ways that you can learn from your peers.
And those instructional coaches, Kristy, are really in a great spot, because they know in these different buildings who is doing exceptional work and who is sort of innovating in some new ways. And they can encourage those teachers to step out and showcase their teaching, right, and their instructional strategies to other teachers.
Absolutely. I feel like that also gives you the power to go to different sites, go to different schools. And that was one thing that we kind of partnered with. So it was like, oh my gosh, let's go to this side of town. And why don't you walk into these rooms? I can see you really learning from this teacher, and you get to kind of highlight different teachers for that route too. So I totally agree.
Yeah, that's awesome. So many times, and that's a continuing challenge. I need to do a better job of it in my context. I've seen it work sort of, a little bit, for lack of better words, to some extent, in terms of getting teachers to go into each other's classrooms, because, you don't want to enforce that. Or I feel like as an administrator, you don't want to push that too hard, but on the other hand, it's so valuable. And so many teachers don't really know the great work that is happening just down the hall. So we have to find better ways of making that happen. One more idea. Have any of you, just by nodding your head, have any of you heard of an app or a tool called SIBME? SIBME. So they are a sort of an edtech startup that is specializing in instructional coaching and particularly filming. So the idea is that teachers set up a phone on a tripod at the back of their own room. They record themselves for 5 or 10 minutes doing whatever lesson, and then together, that gets uploaded to this SIBME platform where the instructional coach and the teacher have this dialogue around that 10-minute sample of footage. And I've seen that work a couple years ago in a different context. And that idea kind of intrigues me in the sense that once you have that video content, you might actually, with that teacher's permission, of course, you might actually be able to repurpose that and share it and say, hey, check out what this person is doing over here. That would take a lot of teacher courage to be able to give up that autonomy. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that's part of your culture, right? And I think Bill Gates actually has been advocating for that a while. And there are a few platforms that are out there to do that. I don't think they're as widely used as I would like to see. Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely something we could be looking to.
Yeah. And what's funny is that we did like our induction model. And as a mentor, I was helping a first year teacher who was down the road, and I couldn't, because usually it's typically at your school, right? Well, this teacher didn't have anybody. And so I was able to kind of partner with them. And then what we did was, I told you I have 4 cats that they're all circling right now. But one cool thing that we did was we didn't use that platform. We used a different one, but she would film herself. And then I would go in, it was Play Pause It. I'd go in and just put in questions or affirmations, because I didn't want her to think that I was kind of judging. I just wanted her to build her up. And then it was this great way to go back to all these different videos that she can just reflect on. Because really, you learn the most when you see yourself, because you're like, oh, I didn't realize that I had my back to the audience, if you will, right? And then that my kids can't see me, or I didn't realize I was doing that, and then they can kind of learn and from themselves, right?
Yeah. And if I could add to that, it's coaches can do that too, because for one of my projects for Orange County Department of Ed was to do micro-credentialing for coaches. And so coaches would videotape them in a coaching session, and they would reflect and they'd be go, oh my gosh, my posture is so unprofessional. Oh my gosh, I really sound dismissive there. I cannot believe I am not listening enough. And so I think we can all, principals, coaches, teachers, kids, I think we can all record ourselves and reflect on it. And it's a really interesting way.
I had a course, I have to quickly tell this snapshot story here. I had a course in my university training called micro teaching, where we actually did regularly record each other teaching, teaching the class, and then we would sit around and critique it. So the whole class is critiquing my teaching, which was a little nerve-wracking. But I do remember one lesson where the instructor asked us to do some sort of a demonstration, and I tried to lead my class through a demonstration of how to fold a paper airplane. And then the professor led the class in a rebellion of just throwing the paper airplanes all over the place to sort of simulate a real life classroom. So that is a memory I will never forget, because I was like, do I tell my professor to stop? Do I shout at him? I don't know what to do right now. It was a really funny situation. But anyway, let's get back to talking about learning. So we briefly touched on video there, and that's really interesting. We've talked about how we can learn from our students, how we can learn from our peers. What about learning from the world? And this gets me excited when I think about the broader PLN. Lauren, can you talk a little bit to that one? How can we learn from the world?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when we started this journey of writing this book, I think kind of thought about things in sort of concentric circles, right? So learning within your classroom, learning outside of your classroom, and then learning like far beyond your classroom, which means, connecting with people all over the world. And we live in this fabulous time where you can literally learn how to do anything. You can learn how to change the faucets on your sink by just clicking on a video, and you can do anything, and it's all at your fingertips. But that can also be like incredibly overwhelming. So there's the learning piece, but there's also kind of the connection piece for the world. So, with the learning, like I'm saying, you can see things within a lot of, groups on, like, let's say Facebook, or connecting with others on social media in multiple ways, or spotting teachers that are doing really interesting things. And if that sparks interest in you, you can find huge communities that can help you and guide you along that process of learning how to do those things. And there's so many great ideas out there. And a lot of times, if we within our own classroom feel really stagnated, we can look out and say, how are people doing this and reigniting their passion in things? And then with the connection piece, we talked a lot about how teaching can be a very isolating profession. If you're in your classroom, sometimes when you close the door, you feel like, am I the only person who's doing this? Am I the only person who knows how to do it? And a lot of times your direct peers might not share the same interests as you, or might not be as helpful as you'd like. And really finding, again, those communities online, and you can connect with people anywhere in the country, around the world, and find peers, real true peers who will, again, teach you, but also encourage you and be alongside you in this profession. And it doesn't matter if they're next door or if they're like 5 states away. It can be a really beautiful connection, and something that really reinvigorates your passion for what you're doing.
5 states away or in a different country, right?
Exactly.
I mean, this is a global village here, and it is really amazing to have friends. We've got Melissa watching from Colombia. We've got friends all over the world, and that's what this becomes. Now, I want to go back to that for a second, Lauren, because off air we talked about just how it is exhausting, and sometimes we don't have the bandwidth to plug into places like Twitter. I mean, when we're really pressed for time and energy, is there anything? Do we have to put that to the side sometimes? Is it podcasts in the commute? What else, or what is working for you in terms of staying in touch with the global village?
That's a really good question, because again, I mean, I think that everyone, is feeling a different level of burnout in this year, just because of how exhausting everything is. I mean, at home, at work, everything in between. it's just a lot. And so to still sort of stay connected is important. But again, sometimes for teachers, if you feel like, gosh, I don't even, with masks and distancing, a lot of people weren't connecting with their immediate peers on campus. And so hopping onto something like Instagram and following peers, or going into, Kristy and I are in great like principal leadership groups on Facebook, and, getting sort of like a small community that you at least kind of observe and then see, okay, when am I ready to re-enter this world? And when am I ready to sort of access information? And that's really what I think is at the heart of the shift from professional development to professional learning, is saying, I'm honoring kind of like where I'm at right now, and what am I ready to do, and what do I want to pursue? And I think learning from the world is like such a great avenue for that.
And like one of the things that we hit on, it was right in peers is hashtags. So like for me, if I'm just super interested in one area, or I need, like help teaching one subject area, and I'm like, I don't know how to do it, I go straight to Twitter and I go on hashtags, and then I get, who's doing this? Who's doing that? Hey, here's a great example. Boom. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to teach that. So that's super powerful. Another piece that we were really passionate about in our book was pulling in international leaders. And that kind of started just one from teaching in South Africa, but two, utilizing ISTE and being a part of ISTE and just the world in general. And so you'll see in our book little highlights throughout it from people all around the world, because we know that as an evolving learner, everyone is an evolving learner. We can all be that together, and that's a movement, and that's a thing that we can do not only in one little area, but around the world. And I really think the way that you connect is through those easy ways as social media. That's the fastest way that you can pick on. And I feel like there's so many people now that you've like through podcasts, through different areas, that you became this like best friends right now on social media. Like I have a new bestie from Instagram that we've just been connecting through. And so I feel like there's so many different ways now that, like Lauren said, a lot of us didn't connect in our own schools, and we had to reach out. And that's when it really became huge. Like I'll touch on the Facebook Bitmoji group. That thing blew up so fast. And then everybody was using Bitmoji classrooms. And it's just like one little small way that you can all learn from each other.
I remember that, Dr. Kristy, that the Bitmoji craze really at the beginning of the pandemic, right? All these teachers were shifting to online, and oh my goodness, we've got to have a Bitmoji class. And that was a really, really big deal for a while. Mandeep on LinkedIn, thank you for the comment. She says, connecting learning is essential to learn from the world. And we heard something a moment ago about honoring where you were at. I think that was your comment, Lauren, and that really sticks with me. That, I think Twitter is a great place, a valuable place, but I know that teachers on my team, some of them are in survival mode, and it would be like the last thing on their mind right now is to go onto Twitter, which is an unfamiliar space to them. So, Lainie, I don't want to leave you out on this round. Could you tell us how you connect with the world? Because as a podcast creator, I feel like you're probably a listener. I feel like that's probably part of your package. Yeah.
I was hanging back because I felt like I could really just go off on this one. I mean, Tim, you and I have obviously connected on social media. I can look at this comments and Shannon Moore, Mel, Pav and Che, like this like conversation that's happening in the side chat. These are all people I've connected with around the world. And, Shannon earlier in the chat, she said, we have to be like mindful of how do we not overwhelm people at this time. Right. And so, and Kristy mentioned hashtags. And so I think that's one of the things that we have to think about, and whether it's going to be using social media or not, really staying focused, I think, is an important way to not be overwhelmed. And then we have a word in the book that I love to use, equifinality. And it's like, we can all have great endings. We don't have to necessarily get there the exact same way. So we can have the same ending, even if we, have our own path to get there. And I love, in your intro, even Tim, you've got that make-believe perfection is in there. And that's something we have to be really conscious of too. And so in the book, we talk about, don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to your previous self. And so I think some people shy away from using social media because they don't want that comparison hangover. But if we just think about our cycle of inquiry and how do we stay focused and how can I go solve this problem? And maybe social media is for you, Maybe going and watching The Teacher Next Door is for you. Maybe learning from your kids is for you. And so social media is huge for me. I can't even tell you what it's meant to me this last year. It's been huge. I mean, I just can't, I don't even have the words. I'll give the clump. I'm so like overwhelmed by the community that I've been able to really lean on in this last year. So.
We want to talk about technology last year, and Lauren, I'll go back to you in a moment. Something you said, and thinking about Lainie's comments as well, when I think of Edu Instagram for a moment, there's a really growing community there. And something that I like to encourage teachers to think about trying is starting a separate education Instagram account. And that sounds overwhelming to a lot of people, like 2 Instagram accounts, that's too much. But when you see how easy it is to switch back and forth between those, you can make that Instagram account exclusively education. And then when you're in that headspace to learn and grow and be inspired, it's just constant educators, right? And it really purifies that space. If I could, can I say purifies? It really keeps it focused, maybe is a better way to put that. And so that's something that I like to encourage both on Twitter and Instagram, is sort of separate lives. But I know not everyone's there. I mean, everyone's got their own way of doing it. Some people like to mix the 2 worlds together. But going back to our last question, what roles can technology play in professional learning today? So Lauren, maybe we've already covered a lot of them. I know we've certainly talked about social media, but is there anything else you would add on this theme of technology?
Well, I think that's really interesting because, and I think that this goes for anyone who's in the classroom right now. A lot of people who maybe were hanging back on technology, maybe out of fear or just it feeling overwhelming, were really forced into it this year with distance learning and hybrid teaching and live streaming and all sorts of things that were really forced upon them out of real need. And I think that we're kind of at this interesting pivot point where people now have some knowledge and are getting their feet wet with a lot of things that scared them for a really long time. And I think that, as administrators, we can build on that. But for teachers, it's just really, I think, that first step to be like, gosh, actually, maybe I can do this, or maybe this isn't as overwhelming as I thought. I love your idea about, creating this separate Instagram account for education. And as coaches, I know that Kristy and I did that a lot too, and said, hey, just start here. And you don't have to even post anything. You're just looking, we're just, window shopping, and it's fine. And because anyone, and this is the truth, I mean, we say it over and over, you will find something that draws your eye. You will find something that you feel that you can replicate. And then you may get to a point where you also want to share, because everyone has something to share with others. And that's a huge point too. I think a lot of teachers, we kind of sit back and go, oh, no, it's okay. There's people doing this better than I am. Oh gosh, no one wants to hear from me, whatever. But that's absolutely not true. And that's where that connection starts, is saying, hey, like, you posted this thing and I loved it. And if you want, I've got this, and driving the community forward, I think, is where it starts.
Yeah. So good. Erica is on Facebook and she's saying, looking forward to reading your book, ladies. Love your website and collaboration of 3 genius minds. Well, thank you for joining us, Erica, and thank you for all of your comments this morning. That's been really fun. That brings us to the end of our conversation. I feel like we could go for hours in many of these directions, but this has been really wonderful. I want to make sure to give you each an opportunity to talk about how we can connect with you and join your learning journey. So Lainie, maybe I'll start with you on this one. What are the best ways to connect? And as you're talking, maybe I will do my best to bring up some of these websites or accounts that you mentioned. But while we're waiting, actually, ladies, you can feel free to share your screen too when it comes time to sharing how we can connect with you. But Lainie, we'll start with you on this.
Sure. So, and by the way, I don't think I mentioned Scott earlier. And so I'm just, again, so grateful to all my friends who are already connecting with me, and I would love to make some new friends. So you can connect with me. I'm Lainie Rowell across the web. And I'm sorry that both of those are hard to spell, Lainie, and then Rowell like Powell, Rowell. But there's not that many Lainies out there. So maybe it's not that hard to find me, but I'm Lainie Rowell across the web on all the socials, LainieRowell.com. Obviously, we've got evolvinglearner.org, which kudos to Kristy, because she's our genius behind that. She's the main person for the website, and we love that. And yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Insta, I'm on LinkedIn, mostly on Twitter, and that's how I know my friends that I've mentioned here. So hope to connect with more of you. And I just want to really quickly say, I'm just so excited that there's people here having this conversation, and to the people who are listening later, there's so many opportunities that we have. This is such a great, exciting time. I know it's been a hard time this last 15 months, but this is such a great opportunity to really rethink roles and redesign learning. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks for coming. And Kristy, how can we connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Twitter is like the easiest way. So Dr. Kristy Andre, but you pulled up our website and you went to our main page. But if you pull that back up, and I have it too, but one of the really fun ways that we started the movement, if you saw that on there, join the movement. But if you click on blog, so our passion for the blog was not only from us, but like we said, everybody's an evolving learner. So you can see that we've tried to pull in all different people to write little posts for our blog as their niche into evolving learners. And so if anybody's listening and you want to join and write a blog post for it, we'd love to showcase your work as well, because we all evolve together.
So what I hear you saying is that I could submit a blog post to your website?
We would love that.
That sounds really exciting. Thanks for that. I look forward to checking out those topics again in a moment. And Lauren, how can we connect with you?
I am at Lauren M. Stein, because they can't fit Steinman. And I love connecting with other principals, leaders, ed tech, teachers, whoever. I love learning from other people. I mean, we walk our talk, so we love connecting with others. And then again, just in addition, I love, Kristy, that you talked about the blog posts. And then also we have a wonderful free discussion guide on the website as well. So again, if you're in a PLC, a book club, if you're leading a group, admin, whatever, it's a great sort of like tag along piece that is easy to implement and help really start some really powerful discussions like this. So thank you.
That is very cool. And I can see some podcast possibilities with the book club as well. So very, very fun. A lot going on. You are, ladies, you are practicing what you preach. And I really appreciate how you are modeling continuous evolving learning, professional learning. Thank you so much for this conversation. I know, just speaking to you off air, how busy the three of you are. So thank you so much for sharing your time generously with the podcast this morning and just sharing your insights. Again, it's called I keep saying but it's just Evolving Learner, making that shift from professional development to professional learning. Make sure to connect with these three. Ladies, thank you so much. We're going to leave our conversation there, but I know we will talk again soon. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.